guys, so I just want to tell you a little bit more about how ADOFitness got started and my background and kind of like how everything in my life came to this point. So for those of you who are new to following me, I started competing, I think I was 23 when I decided to do my first show. I was pushed to compete from my brother, and my brother, he lived with me at the time, and he was a personal trainer. He had gotten out of the military and he started competing in bodybuilding, and he really wanted me to do a show. So he actually tried to convince me to compete in college. My senior year of college, I was training with him just to try to stay in shape, but I ate like crap. I had no nutritional education whatsoever. I had no idea. I was terrible. So anyway, he wanted me to compete my senior year, and I tried to prep for a show and I failed miserably. I think I did like 3 months of prep and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't hang. The diet was way too hard for me. I was in school. I had a ton going on, and I dropped out of the show before I even really got started. So when I dropped out, I kind of felt like depressed. I felt like I didn't have a goal any longer. I played sports my whole, like, growing up. My childhood was always sports, and so when I did start to prep, it kind of like gave me that competitive mode back, and I loved that. And so when I dropped out of the show, it kind of took that away from me again, and I missed it, but I just failed miserably at dieting. So anyway, he told me, he said, when you graduate college, you have to promise me you're going to do a bodybuilding show. And I said, okay, deal. So I graduated, and that summer he didn't forget. He came up to me and he's like, okay, it's time to do this. And honestly, at the time, I was kind of lost in life. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have like a lot of direction after college. I kind of thought a career would fall in my lap, and that's not how it works. So I decided I would give it a go, and I started prepping. He actually tricked me. He said, they have this new division and it's just like a pageant, and I had done pageants before, so he said if I train for this, it's just like a really fit pageant. And that was the bikini division, which actually started in 2009. And so I said, okay, let's do this. I can do a pageant. So he had me prepping like way early because he knew I would not be ready for this show unless I had like an extended period of time, because I was terrible at dieting. I did not want to diet. I'd never been on a diet in my life. I loved what I loved in my foods, and I hated restricting anything. I was a big variety person. I loved going to Starbucks and getting my like mocha frappuccinos with whipped cream. So anyway, I finally decided to actually take the prep serious, and I prepped from like May all the way to October. That's how long it took me. But he was a great coach. He knew that simply by just reducing my calorie intake and upping my expenditure, I would get results. So I was never on like a set meal plan. I just had things that were off limits and things I needed to eat more of, like vegetables. And I ended up doing that show in October, and I won the overall at that show. So after that, I was kind of hooked. Unfortunately, in that time frame, I had met a guy who is now my ex-fiance, and he owned a gym and was a trainer as well. And I decided for my following show after that, I would train with him. He kind of convinced me that I might as well train with him. He was my boyfriend at the time. And his mode and methods of training were very extreme, and he wanted me on a set meal plan, and I would fight it, and I said, this isn't working for me. I need variety. I can't do this. But he would be like, oh, if you want to win, this is what you have to do, and kind of fill my head with these thoughts that were very unhealthy. And so after a few years of being with him and prepping in that manner, and just a very, very unhealthy, restrictive manner, I still wasn't overly aware of what I was intaking nutritionally, but I knew it was wrong because I was doing excessive amounts of working out. I felt like I was starving all the time. I started to binge eat. I would eat in the car. I would eat like, I would go to the store and hide from him and like bring Tupperware and eat cereal in the car. I would hide peanut butter like in the bathroom of where we lived because I knew if he found it, he would be mad. It was like very, very sick and very, very unhealthy. So I started getting these really bad binge tendencies. Like, I'm I'm talking like I would buy a box of Girl Scout cookies and eat the whole thing, and it wouldn't even faze me. Like I was starving. So long story short, after like 2 or 3 years of doing that, I became very, very unhealthy mentally and physically. I would put on like 20 pounds after every show, you know, and then I'd have to try to struggle to get it off again for the next show. I was embarrassed, like I would blow up because my intake and my expenditure was so extreme that when I cut that back, I couldn't control my cravings and I would eat until I was sick. And so that went on for a while, and in 2012 we broke up. I ended that relationship. That's a whole nother video I'll get into. Some of you know it was very toxic and very abusive, so we'll revisit that another time. But I ended that relationship, and in 2013 I decided to take things into my own hands, and my body was so beaten up from those years of extremes that honestly there was no way for me to keep competing and do it in a healthy manner. But I was determined to find a healthier manner at the time. So I started really looking into macronutrients and educating myself on nutrition, and knowing that there was a better way out there that I could still get results and not be so mentally mind-fucked, for lack of better words. So I took things into my own hands. I started training myself that year. I competed at the Emerald Cup, which is the world's largest regional show in the nation, and took first place, coaching myself. And then I went on to nationals that year. I took second place at junior nationals in Chicago, which is also where I met Brandon. And then I went on to compete at another national show and didn't do quite as well. And at that point, I was so beaten up and so run down. I decided that my passion wasn't going to be in competing. I needed to find something else that could make me happy and still be relevant in the fitness industry. So I kind of dove into creating my brand at that point. ADOFitness started around the end of 2012, but really 2013 is when I started to establish myself as a brand. And I moved everything online at the end of 2013. I was training people in person in Oregon, where I lived. But I moved everything online when I met Brandon, because I knew if I wanted to move to be with him, since he lived in South Dakota, I needed to have a method to keep working with people, but I couldn't do it one-on-one and in person. So that's when I created ADOFitness Online, which is what we've ran now with our team of trainers since the end of 2013, the beginning of 2014, when I hired my first employee. So along that kind of path, I put myself into as much research as I could. I really dug deep into fixing myself physically. I started working with a hormone specialist, or an endocrinologist is what they're called, in 2013, because I was not having a period. I couldn't lose weight for the life of me. I was so tired, you guys. Living on coffee, and it did nothing to me. I could sleep all day long. Later I found out I had full-blown, well, not full-blown, but almost full-blown adrenal exhaustion. I was in stage 3 of adrenal fatigue, which I've talked about a lot, and I'll touch on that more. But when I got my hormones tested that year is when everything kind of came to light after I had finished my last show. I knew I was so unhealthy, and my body was just like, screw you, I'm not having a period, I'm not hormonally balanced anymore. My estrogen levels were way off. My progesterone level was almost non-existent. My DHEA was low. I was like a mess. So that year was kind of dedicated to more of my recovery and learning about my body and hormones in 2014. That's also when I started to expand my business, though, because the demand was so high at that point I couldn't take on as many clients as I wanted to. And my background is actually in economics and business, so I knew that I needed to meet demand somehow, and I hired my first employee or trainer in 2014. Today, ADOFitness consists of 8 trainers, including myself. We just hired Kristen last week, so she's our 8th trainer. We've grown into a huge business and brand, and I'm so grateful for it. But I kind of wanted you guys to know where it came from. And really, it was just, I had this passion that the fitness industry is not the health industry, and I wanted to change that. I wanted to show people that they didn't need to go through extremes and, do things that were so detrimental to their overall health to be a competitor or to be lean or to look good or to feel comfortable in their body. I knew that the method I took was wrong and it didn't need to be that way, but I wanted to figure out how people could do it in a balanced, healthy way and not be so mentally mind-fucked from these extremes. And so that was really like my passion and my goal with creating my business. And, you know, I wanted to teach people what not to do because I saw it so much in the fitness industry and online, and these extremes and no days off and, you know, excessive amounts of cardio and 2-a-days in the gym. And I was like, this is not sustainable. People cannot keep doing this and expect that, you know, they can do this over the long run. And I wanted to create a business model and a plan and a philosophy that worked for the long run. And that's really what ADOFitness is all about.